Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fishing with Rod. It's been a while since I've done a video like this in the studio, and I think it's about time. If you're new here, my name is Rod, and I make educational and entertaining videos which focus on sport fishing in British Columbia. And in this particular video, I want to focus on river salmon fisheries. It's early September, and in the next few months, we have the opportunities to fish for salmon in rivers right across the lower mainland, on Vancouver Island, and beyond. And this particular video, I don't want to focus so much on the gear and techniques, which I've done many times in the past, but more on the legality and the basics that you need to know before heading out to the rivers fishing for salmon. So the very first thing you need to have is your basic freshwater fishing license if you want to fish in rivers and lakes in British Columbia. And you can purchase that by clicking on the link in the description below. The second thing is if you want to keep salmon, the salmon that you catch, you have to pay for a salmon conservation surcharge as well. Both of these fees are money well spent. Your freshwater fishing license fees go to the Freshwater Fishery Society BC, which are responsible for operating several trout hatcheries in this province and stocking hundreds of lakes, so you have the opportunity to go out and enjoy catching them. Your conservation surcharges go to the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation, which fund many research and conservation projects to improve our resources. So like I say, it's money well spent. So once you have your freshwater fishing license, you need to know the regulations. I'm going to sum up the basics of the freshwater fishing regulations, but I'm going to also provide the link in the description below so you can click on it and read the regulations in details. Regulations do change from time to time during the season, so it's really important to review them before heading out every time. The very first thing you need to know is that you can only use one rod at any given time when fishing in rivers. You can carry 10 rods if you want. Got lots of rods behind me. You can carry 10 rods with you, but you can only use one rod at any given time. Second thing is that you can only have one hook on the line, and that hook has to be single barbless when fishing in rivers. So this is a single hook, meaning that it's got a single point on it, and it originally has a barb on it. And to make it barbless, you just have to pinch that barb down and that will remove it. The purpose of a single barbless hook is there are many occasions you actually have to release the fish that you catch. So there are protected salmon in the rivers. If you encounter them, you have to release them. And a single barbless hook makes that a lot easier, both for you to remove the hook. Also, it improves the survival rate of the salmon once you release them, so they can in fact travel to the spawning ground and reproduce successfully. This would be a treble hook. This in fact is a treble barb hook. So it's got 3 points and it's got barbs on them. And this would be an illegal hook to use. So many lures that you buy in the stores in fact come with a treble hook. So you actually have to remove this hook and replace it with a single barbless hook. You can also buy single hooks that are already barbless as well. So for example, this is the owner's no escape hooks, and they are barbless if you don't want to have to deal with the hassle of pinching down barbs. The next thing you have to know is that you can only fish for salmon in rivers during the day. This applies to many Fraser River tributaries in the lower mainland. Make sure you check the regulations if you're in other regions to see if that applies to you. So daytime hours is defined by from 1 hour before sunrise to 1 hour after sunset. You can't fish for salmon at night. In every river system, there are areas that are closed for fishing. Take Chilliwack River, for example, there is an upper boundary and a lower boundary. So the upper boundary is near the salmon hatchery, and upstream from that, you can't actually fish in that area. That it's meant to protect salmon which are spawning in the area, so they're not disturbed by anglers. The lower boundary is close to the mouth where the river enters the Fraser River, and you got to make sure you stay upstream from that lower boundary as well. So always fish within the fishable area and stay away from the closed area. The fourth thing you need to know is there are daily limits on salmon which you're allowed to keep. I'm not going to go into details on exact numbers because those numbers vary from river system to river systems. So it's really important to check before you go. I'm going to leave the link in the description below where you can check the daily limits of salmon and what species are opened. So like I said, it's really important to check it before you go and stay within that limit. Now, it's really important to know the definition of two phrases, which are no fishing for a particular salmon species and no retention for a particular salmon species. Those two are quite different. No fishing for a particular salmon species, meaning that you can't fish for them at all. That includes catching and releasing them. You can't target that particular species. No retention for a particular salmon species means that you can in fact fish for them, you can catch and release them, you just can't retain them. The purpose of having these two different management approaches is based on the status of the salmon populations in the river system. So in the river, you can have several different salmon stocks. Some are doing quite well, while some might do quite poorly. So take Chilliwack River, for example. Coates Lake sockeye salmon are protected, they're endangered, so there is no fishing for Coates Lake sockeye salmon, which means you can't even target, catch, and release them, while targeting more abundant species such as Chinook salmon and coho salmon. So speaking of Chinook and coho salmon, those are the two main target species which most anglers target here in the lower mainland in all of the main tributaries in the Fraser River. So take Chilliwack River, for example. There's a good abundance of both Chinook and coho salmon. But when fishing for coho salmon, there is two different varieties that you'll come across. One is hatchery coho salmon, which has its adipose fin removed during its juvenile stage. So you wouldn't find the adipose fin on the hatchery coho salmon. Instead, you'll see a little healed scar on the top. Whereas wild coho salmon are protected. You can fish for them, you just can't retain them. And if you encounter a wild coho salmon, meaning that a coho salmon with an adipose fin on it, you have to release it carefully in the water. The best way to handle these fish that you have to release is by just keep the fish in the water. Don't bring onto land to remove the hook because any injuries caused on the fish while doing so can really damage the fish, and meaning that you jeopardize its success to spawn later on. So let's talk about etiquettes. Etiquette's a little different to regulations. So unlike regulations, which pretty much is black and white, etiquettes can vary from one person to another. So the perception of how people should act at the river is quite different between a novice angler and a very experienced angler. So there are bound to be conflicts, especially on the busy river system such as the Chilliwack River, which is within 1 hour drive from Metro Vancouver, where the population is close to 3 million people. With so many people wanting to fish, it's really important to understand, get along with one another. So these are just my own opinions when it comes to etiquettes. They may be quite different to yours, so feel free to add in the comment section what else you think should be included, or if you agree or disagree with me, feel free to leave it in the comment as well. I'm always happy to read your opinions and learn from that at the same time. So the very first thing I like to keep in mind is that you always want to treat each other like the way you want to be treated. Having respect is key. When you come up to a busy section of the river, just be mindful. I think communication is key. Greet each other and just to find out whether you can in fact fish right next to someone or not. Everyone's personal space is a little different. And if you're already fishing at the run and someone else is coming, it's also important to understand that in the busy river system, there's not a whole lot of space to fish, and just keep that in mind and compromise a little bit as well. Even though the Chilliwack River can be pretty busy, you can in fact walk and find some quiet spots from time to time as well. I personally tend to stay away from busy spots and look for quiet spots. And those do exist, and you just gotta do some legwork and find those spots. But if you choose to fish in the busy spot, I don't think you should be complaining about that, and just try to be, like I say, try to have more understanding. If the fishing is good, and just take your time. Don't cast over people's line when they're fighting a fish. I think that can make a huge difference on everyone's day. Other things I like to include, always pack everything out, never leave any garbage behind, especially fishing lines and lead and hooks. That can really ruin someone's day and really impact wildlife that use the river system. You're sharing this river with other anglers, but also other wildlife as well. So from eagles to bears, which are feeding on the salmon around the same time. So it's really important to pack everything out. Respect local residents that live by the river. Here on the Chilliwack River, there are lots of private properties. It's really important to not trespass and actually access from public accessing spots. Now, one thing I think we can all do kind of voluntarily is not part of the regulation. The regulation actually allows you to keep fishing for salmon once you retain your daily limit of salmon. But I think it's really important, especially in the busy river system, to think about actually just stop fishing for salmon once you keep your limit of salmon. There are two purposes for that. One is to make room for other anglers to enjoy the same fishing that you have been enjoying. The second thing is avoiding catching and releasing more salmon. These fish are coming back to the rivers to spawn. It's really important to minimize our impact on these fish so it's sustainable in the future. Well, I think that's about it for this mini lesson. River salmon fishing can be quite challenging at the very start, and 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I first started, I made many mistakes on my own, both fishing and also the way I fish may have impacted other more experienced anglers. And I'm hoping videos like this would cut down that learning curve a little bit, to cut down some of the mistakes, to avoid a lot of conflicts at the river, and so everyone can have a good time. Just to mention that I have written a blog post for Tourism Chilliwack on the fall river salmon fisheries, and I'll leave that link in the description below as well, so you can go check it out. And if you have any other questions, make sure you leave a comment on the bottom. I'm always doing my best to answer your questions so you can get out and have a good time. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you find this video useful. On the channel we have over 800 videos now, and many of them focus on river salmon fishing, so make sure you check them out as well. And until next time, good luck fishing. I hope you have a great fall 2024 salmon season.